What's up, y'all? It's been ages since I've done a What's Up, y'all. Ages. And I wasn't sure I would do them anymore. I thought maybe I was done. But I've been getting a nudge on this one for the last day or two. And so, hey. Um, I have been listening to, I've been keeping up with and doing what is mine to do as it relates to um, adding um, my energy of peace to this genocide in Palestine. And one of the things that I have heard over the last few days that is perplexing to me is this statement again and again of the Israeli Defense Federation, the IDF, is the most moral army in the world. And the thing that feels important to lift up in this moment is the anathema of that statement. Because there are people who are arguing that statement because they are doing wildly immoral things like pretending to be humanitarian aid workers and then going into refugee camps and killing hundreds of people to rescue four, killing people as they're trying to get food and flour, like blowing up, like it's there are horrific things happening that in our current framework we talk about as outside of the rules of war. But what I want to challenge actually is the foundational premise of the idea that it is possible to have a moral army. What I want to challenge is the idea that killing people to stop people from killing people, or killing people to protect land for yourself, or killing people to protect property, or killing people to protect your interest, whatever your interest is an inherently amoral activity. And I know that there are people who will disagree with that, right? Who will be like, resistance is moral, right? And what I would offer is like, I'm not proposing that violent resistance isn't effective. But I want us to recalibrate. And I don't even want to, like, and this conversation isn't about that, but we have to address that if we're going to have this conversation. But what I want us to do is to recalibrate our definitions so that we are not trying to mitigate situations from the most like outlandish location, right? From the most egregious manifestation of that thing, right? Like right now we are looking at the most egregious manifestations of what we allow and have codified governments to do and the agents of government to do, right? Like we've said, yes, you can have an army and you can kill people, but you can't kill people that way. Can we hear that that's absurd? Can we hear that the violence that we have imbued governments with on our behalf is absurd? And so the inevitable outcome of that is what we are looking at in Gaza? Is that the inevitable outcome of imbuing a government with the power to go and kill on your behalf is what we are looking at. There is no such thing as a moral army. The foundational premise that gets one to creating an army is an amoral premise. The premise that we get to kill people to protect our interests is an amoral principle. And we say that it is an amoral principle when gangs do it. We say that it's an amoral principle when the mafia does it. We say it is an amoral principle when everyday citizens engage in that behavior. But then we codify that thing that we say is an amoral principle, we codify it into our government and then give those entities the power to go and do it around the world with impunity. The foundational premise is wrong, folks. There is no such thing as a moral army. Which means, and if we understood that there is no such thing as a moral army, then what it would do is it would force us to have to create what is the most moral way that we can mitigate issues in our societies. It would force us, if we assumed that that way was an inherently immoral way, then guess what happens? It requires the brain to open up a neural pathway to consider other possibilities. But if we start with the premise that it is possible to have a moral army, then all the things that get done by that army ultimately get argued as moral. And that is what we're looking at right now. We are looking at the inevitable outcome of really faulty thinking from the beginning that we have empowered our governments to engage in. So I just want to say we can interrupt that piece before it becomes this by rolling it all the way back and saying that the foundational premise is not one that we agree with. You don't get to genocide if you don't decide that war is cool. Like, it doesn't get there if we decide that that is not even a direction we're willing to go. But it means we would have to be down to try something different. We would have to be down to deny the most base, self-protective, self-instinct driven machinations inside of ourselves to get to that place. And I think that it is time. I think that we are looking at the inevitable outcome of disastrous thinking. And it's time to think of new ways. It's time to create possibilities that premise that killing for our own self-interests, whether we are a nation state or an individual, is not okay. And if we started there, I just wonder what we might uncover, what new doors might open, what new possibilities might come into being, what new societies might be birthed. That's all. Thanks.